15 minutes.
I just want to flesh out some of the things Ruth said there, because it's really important to note that there's an ideology being sold to us in this country that somehow we must own. Everybody must own their own house. And I don't know whether it's a hang-up that goes back to Michael Davitt and the Land League, but I think it's more political than that, and I think it's an agenda that's always been driven, particularly in the last few decades, by those who have a vested interest in development and building. But in actual fact, if you look to other European countries, I lived in Germany for a while, for example, and people there rented all their lives, but they rented with strong legislation that stopped landlords putting up the rent. That meant that they have to live in decent conditions. That meant that they couldn't be evicted at the drop of a hat. You would never hear of a landlord in Germany saying, "Oh, geez, I must sell this place, so you have to go," which is what's happening to tens of thousands of families across the country at the moment. And at the same time, there is a social housing policy in Germany, but there was also a big focus on making sure that people lived in conditions that gave them the security of tenure and the fixed rents, etc., and the decent conditions that they deserved. And that's pretty typical of European cities. But in Ireland, we have a hang-up about having to own our own house. Now, I say that hand on heart because my parents bought our house that I grew up in, I think in the 70s or the 80s, having lived in it and paid rent in it for 30 to 40 years. That was quite typical of people across Ireland at the time. But I do think that in a housing crisis, in the situation that we're faced today, we will be making a big mistake if we go down the road of allowing more council houses to be sold back. And the Part 5 in particular is a bit of a joke when you think of how it was abused by the developers for so long. They could pay money, as the other deputy said across there, that they could pay money instead of handing over the houses, and many of them did, and many of them still owe the money. They didn't actually pass it on. So there's real difficulties with the approach that we have to this. Just to say that in 2006, 11% of the entire housing stock in Ireland was social housing, was in the hands of local authorities. But ever since then, as we know, the housing crisis has increased the demand for social housing, and the stock that's available to us has completely shrunk. This bill will do nothing to address that. It will only worsen it. And at the very least, I would have thought that Fianna Fáil would recognise that their friends in the developer and building industry are not actually developing and building at the moment. So what we have, we hold, and we should hold on to as long as we can, in order to provide the desperately needed social and affordable homes to people who are on the list and who are screaming for it out there. So I'd like to argue strongly against the adoption of this bill.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy